Watts, would you do us the honor of the invocation, please?
Please stand and bow your head. Lord, thank you for this day. Please watch over all those overseas who are fighting hard for us, for the freedoms that we are given here in the United States, that we're able to assemble freely and openly. Please watch over all those that are hurting, in pain, both emotionally and physically. Give them the ability to come through and find the strength that give each of us. Watch over us today as we make the difficult decisions for the people of the Cherokee Nation and how we affect the state of Oklahoma. Bless all of us. Watch over our travels. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Callan Watts. Roll call.
Meredith Fraley.
Here.
Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb.
Honey.
Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Janelle Fulbright. John Garvin.
Honey.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Tina Glory Jordan. Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Stokes.
Here.
David Thornton. Kara Callan Watts.
Honey,
We have a quorum.
we have a quorum. Committee, before we continue, Dr. Cobb has an introduction I believe you'd like to make.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce former Chief of the Delaware Nation, Joe Brooks, is in the audience.
Glad to have you, Mr. Brooks. Any other introductions? Any other introductions anyone would like to make? We have a lot of guests here today, so I'd ask that you please turn off or put your phone on silent, your cell phone on silent, so that it isn't disrupted, and that includes council people too. Thank you very much. Next order of business is approval of the December 20 regular session minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Yes, Ms. Honey.
I would like for us to consider a motion to amend the agenda to move number 10 to the forefront. I believe agenda item number 10 is what most of the audience is here for.
Second.
Mr. Baker, do you have an amendment to that?
Yes. Actually, I would like to move number 13 to first and then item 10, if possible. Because Jennifer Berger Johnson is here and from Oklahoma City, Edmond, and needs to get back.
Which one do you want to do first?
I prefer to do number 13.
I accept.
I would ask that we do 10 first. I think it may go quicker than you think. And then let's do 13.
And I'm in no big hurry.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, so we're amending the agenda to put item 10, under new business, item 10 first, item 13 second. All minds clear. All in, Mr. Hembry?
Is that previous to reports, or is it on the new, or on new business?
It's on new business.
Okay, on new business.
Were you
Okay.
listening?
No, sorry.
I would ask that it be the very next thing that we discuss.
Items 10 and 13, before reports.
Yes.
Okay, everyone clear now? All in favor of amending the agenda to place item 10 and item 13 that are under new business before reports? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next item is December 17th subcommittee meetings.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on the December 17 minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, next order of business is item 10 under new business, which is legislative act amending the tobacco legislation. And Ms. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This act is being presented, and I've handed out a brief outline, just a one-page outline of the act, to talk about its features. And what I'll do is briefly go over what the act does and present it to you, and then you can choose to take action on it if you will. It's called the Wholesaler Act of 2008, and what it does in essence is two things. It provides authority for us to create a wholesaler, which would be the nation as the licensee for that wholesale company, and then it would also create an option for purchasing what we call the border shops, those shops that are within a certain mile border of Arkansas and Missouri. And what I'll do is go through each part of this outline and answer your questions for you, and then we'll move forward. The trigger on this act, the effective date is very important. This act does not become effective unless we're without a compact, a tribunal rules that we're without a compact, or that we just terminate the existing compact. So the status quo as it stands now continues to happen until such time as we're without a compact. So even though this authority would be in place, the status quo stays the same unless the compact is terminated. The wholesaler itself, it authorizes the nation to be licensed as a wholesaler. And what the purpose of this is if we're without a compact, there needs to be some means to get merchandise into the Cherokee Nation to sell, because our arrangement with the state is they would recognize the arrangements into the compact and not tax those differently than the way we have it authorized in the compact. If there's no compact, all bets are off, and there's no clean way for shops to get cigarettes in the Cherokee Nation. And so what the wholesaler authorization would do, the nation would become a wholesaler, acquire that merchandise, resell it to retail shops in the Cherokee Nation, and there would be a 65% tax rate on those sales. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's a means of supply, but also if there's any disputes over us transporting cigarettes into the Cherokee Nation onto Indian lands, the nation itself bears that risk. The nation itself that ends up in court, not individual retailers. So in the case that we don't have a compact, we still get cigarettes, and the nation bears the risk for that. Okay, so on to the rate. The tax rate in this act is set at 65%. The reason for that is, as a fail-safe option, if there's no compact, the state's tax rate would be 75%. So not only is this 10% less than that no compact rate, as we call it, but also is the same level of tax advantage that we had under the previous compact before this one. And so that is the reason for the 65%. The licensing changes the licensing for a wholesaler. Obviously, our current law says our wholesalers have to be licensed by the state of Oklahoma. This would change under this act to provide that no state license would be required. The buyout or the purchase provisions of this act, as I stated previously, it provides an option, and it would be at the retailer's option to sell their business to the Cherokee Nation. And the purpose for that is whether we have no compact or we negotiate a new compact, it is almost 100% likely that either event will be a flat rate. There will no longer be what we call border rates that exist under a new compact. It will be a flat rate of some amount. And the reason for that is that the border rate management has not worked. And there's been disputes over that. The state's had disputes with us. We've had disputes with the state about retail-to-retail sales and so forth. And any negotiations with the state going forward, they've made it quite clear it will be a flat rate. So what does that mean for the border shops that have to compete with other states? So what this provides is an option for those border shops to essentially sell their business. If they believe it will not be viable under the new tax regime, they'll have the option to sell their business to the nation, and we would purchase that from them. And this outline shows you what the basis for that purchase was, how we would value that and offer them as a purchase offer to them. It would be based on an average of 3 years. And what we've done is we've taken 3 years that were what we call sort of normalized sales before we had the retail-to-retail sales going on. So it would be 3 average years of what we call normal average years. So before the retail sales. We also, and you'll notice it's the last item on your outline, we also need to address, if we do a buyout plan, we also need to address the leases on Indian land. So those landowners that have those leases and lease to smoke shops, if they choose to sell their business to the nation, we want to make those landowners whole, so to speak. So what we would do is we would essentially buy out their lease as well, and that would be paired with the purchase of the business itself. So what we would do is look at the terms of the lease, how many years are left on that lease, what are the lease payments and so forth, and make an offer also to buy out the lease. At the same time, we would buy the business. Now, that again, this is an option to the retailer. They don't have to choose that option. Obviously, you know, there are cigarette retailers along the border that are not Indian that do make profit selling cigarettes near Arkansas and near Missouri. So those retailers may choose to stay open, and they have the ability to do so. They would just be under a flat tax regime is what we believe. So that's in essence what the Act does. And so I would be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
I'd entertain a motion and a second so that we can go into discussion.
I call for the question. I second it.
Question,
To pass, when we're going to do the passes.
Call for vote.
Yeah, we'll call for the vote.
okay,
Madam Chair,
we have to have a motion first. A
When we
motion
make a
and a
motion,
second.
we call that we consider the passage of this act.
And second. Okay, now discussion. Mr.
Yes,
No, Mr. Baker was first, I'm sorry. He
Unfortunately, this is a formula for disaster, and it'll put every smoke shop in the Cherokee Nation out of business. I mean, if we want to come up with a wholesale plan to where we guarantee the smoke shops an advantage, guarantee to sell them $3 cheaper than what Walmart gets to buy it for, but our smoke shops have been under attack for years. Walmart has made deals with the smoke shop, with the cigarette companies. Murphy's has made deals, and Quick Trip has made deals. So the tax really is moot. It doesn't matter what the tax is. If the cigarette companies are willing to sell enough cheaper than that tax to these big companies. So if we're going to do the Cherokee Nation and we're going to try to get a deal, I seriously doubt we can go to Marlboro and get them to sell us as cheap as Walmart. But knowing that, let's take the hit and guarantee the smoke shops that we'll sell it $3 a carton cheaper than what Walmart's given, and that would put us on a level playing field. And that's what this has always been about, is we as an Indian nation have had an advantage selling cigarettes. There are very few things that we have, but that's one of them. And to sit here and as a government say, okay, we're going to do 65% of the state tax so that we don't take any heat from the state, knowing that 10% difference, Walmart's already buying cigarettes 10% cheaper than that. It's ludicrous. And so, I mean, all we're doing is putting the smoke shops out of business if we do this, and I will be opposed to it.
Mr. Buzzard?
yes, I'd like to ask Ms. Jordan if she would withdraw her motion. Let me make a motion to approve this so we can have some more discussion on the thing. I'd like to hear more discussion on it before we vote on it. I don't think it's probably going to pass anyway. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but I would like to hear more discussion on it. So I make a motion that we...
One moment.
Aren't we in discussion?
Yeah, on her
On her
motion.
motion,
Okay.
But I'd make a motion, I'd ask for her to withdraw her motion, and I'll make a motion to approve this resolution so we can go in and discuss it further.
And I'll withdraw my motion and second that motion.
Okay, so make that motion.
All in? Okay, now we're open for discussion. Okay, Mr. Buzzard, is that all you had?
Yes,
All right. Ms. Callen-Watts?
Thank you. I would like to yield some time to Mr. Joe Lane if it was okay with you, Madam Chair.
Well, let's let the council have their discussions first, if you don't mind, Ms. Count Watts.
Okay.
And then we'll open it up to the spokespersons for the...
Okay, you do have time. That's what I didn't know. Thank you.
Mr. Hostin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to the buyout, I mean, I note that the years that the administration is looking at are somewhat dated. Can you explain why those years were chosen?
Yes, I can. There are two options to approach this. One would be to use years before the most current compact because we didn't have the retail-to-retail sales factored into those sales. Or else we could use current year sales and simply back out the retail-to-retail sales. So either one of those options I think would work for purposes of approximating what the profit would be under normal circumstances.
But isn't a third option just to use the years even though they were retail-to-retail sales? Because isn't it a fact that there was actually nothing that violated the compact through those retail-to-retail sales? I mean, it seems to me that the smoke shops were being good business people like Quick Trip. They went to the extent of what the compact said and not beyond that. I mean, the state of Oklahoma has called the Cherokee people cheats and liars for that kind of activity. It seemed to me they were acting consistent with the compact. So shouldn't we honor that they had good business practices and say, if we're going to do a buyout, let's use the most recent years? I mean, isn't that the most equitable way to approach this?
I believe the most equitable way to approach it would be to approximate what the profit would be in their operations. And with a flat tax, there will be no retail-to-retail sales. And they'll have to evaluate the profitability of that arrangement and whether a buyout option is more advantageous to them or not, or whether operating under that umbrella is going to be profitable for them. So in terms of valuing the business, the value of the business is how much retail sales they can have under a flat tax.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Todd, did you want to respond to that? Ms. Fishing Hawk is next.
I would defer all my questions to after the council has had it.
Okay. Jody?
I got two. Number one, Madam Chair, how do we ask other tribes, like, I know from the Osage is what Gray said. I know that for a fact that he said he's looking at 25%, that's it. How do we ask other ones, because they do have to agree to this too, what they're looking at?
Others?
Tribes.
Tribe? We just write them a letter or phone them. As far as I know. Melanie, have you discussed this with other tribes?
We have had discussions with other tribes, and other tribes' circumstances are sometimes different. Chickasaws and Choctaws operate all their own shops, so it's a whole different scenario because the tax is less meaningful because they get to keep the profit. So whether they tax the business or just keep the profit or a blend of both, in those circumstances it's just different. And all the tribes are going to approach it differently. Currently, Creeks are operating under a wholesale arrangement. I don't know what their tax rate is, but they do have retail outlets that they turn around and sell to. So the competition is different, the border arrangement is different, and how they operate and license their shops are different. So.
And then one more. I'm not understanding the wholesaler part. Is there anybody here that can tell me, because I thought I seen something on it that can tell me about how you go about being a wholesaler, and can we actually be a wholesaler?
Melanie, you want to respond to that?
I think I can respond in general terms, and then I'd have the tax commission fill in on the specifics. But the general terms right now under our present law, to be a wholesaler licensed by the nation, you must also be a wholesaler licensed by the state. So you have to have a state license in order to get the tribal license. And what this act would do would change that. First of all, it makes the nation the exclusive licensee because so that we assume the risk. Now, we could assign that or contract that to another party, but that way the nation's the one that's holding the ball in court, essentially. So it changes the requirement to have state license, and then it also changes who can be licensed under the code. So, want to talk specifics to Greg? I'd ask Greg Simmons to talk about specifics about it.
And then there was someone else.
There's somebody here from the industry that I've seen. I don't know if they're still here.
Oh, okay.
I think they're from Campbell's, and I wanted to talk to them.
Do you have additional things to say about a wholesale?
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Simmons, to what Melanie voiced?
Just what Melanie said. Under our current code, you would have to be licensed by both the state and the Cherokee Nation, and that changing the code is only about the licensing. It's not about the operation of a wholesaler, and those decisions would have to be made by someone other than the tax commission.
Who was it, Jody? Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Oh, hi. You want to come forward? Ms. Fishing Hawk has a question of you as a wholesaler.
Yes, ma'am.
Jody?
How long have you been in the business? How long have you been wholesaling?
40 years. I've been
Okay.
personally 37, but
Okay.
40 for the family.
Talk to me about the tribe becoming a wholesaler, and can we become a wholesaler? Because I keep hearing,
You can become a wholesaler. You would have to get a state license, and if you had a state license, you'd have to go with the state rules. The Creeks do have a wholesaler. It's not licensed by the state. Some of their cigarettes do not have any stamps. They are buying from another tribe or state stamp cigarettes. They're buying the low-end tax cigarettes and then trading them out and selling them themselves. We couldn't sell to you if you wasn't compact. If I did, I would have to put a $7.75 tax on each carton of cigarettes, the non-compact tax. And your 65 that she's offering is a better situation. But on the tobacco, the retailer down the street has a better situation than you would on your 65% tax on the tobacco. But on the wholesale part, you would have to be licensed by the state for us to sell. You'd have to sell with the state according to state rules. The state wouldn't license you if you wouldn't. And then your cigarettes would be the contraband, and the tribe would assume the risk. The major manufacturers, Bill and them, they will not sell you at a cheaper rate. They're real staunch at the rate they are, and we have been told for years, and there's been tribes before, they will not put you guys on direct. We're having a tough time staying on after 40 years. There's been, my family, my father died 3 years ago, and it's been in a trust. Now, most of the cigarette companies I've gone right through because I've inherited 6% and bought 40%. I'm having trouble with Philip Morris now after running it for 37 years. The legal tangle work, our Philip Morris contract is almost an inch and a half thick. And the rules that they're not putting anybody new on direct. Philip Morris has said at their annual meetings they're actually wanting to consolidate wholesalers. So without Philip Morris, and the native side is 35% of our business, on the retail side is 65%. You would have a tough time. You would only be able to get low-end cigarettes. And in the case of the Creek Wholesale, they buy one cigarette out of Canada. The Senecas, and it's unstamped. They were buying the Cayuga cigarettes, and they discontinued that. But what they're doing is not what you guys are proposing doing.
so we are...
Because they are right now buying out of another nation a stamped cigarette from a retailer.
Okay. So,
It's kind of like store to store.
so your big ones like Philip Morris, RJ Reynolds, we're not going to be able to get cigarettes from them?
They're steadfast, and it's tough to stay on every year.
Okay. Has anybody ever partnered or bought into something?
They won't do that. If myself, I wanted to open another branch or buy another wholesaler, you have to go through the improvement rate all over again. They do background checks on everybody. On Philip Morris, on all of our officers this year, there's even a clause that everybody that's an officer has to sign that they've had no tobacco convictions in the last few years. And they do background checks on everybody. If you try to partner, they want to check it out. And it doesn't go for the tribes. This goes back to where there might have been a mafia influence trying to get in. Cigarettes used to be a cash cow, and some states didn't have stamps, and they were bootleg cigarettes. And this is something they've held ever since then. And it's not just because of a tribe on that. But they will not let us partner. Any partner has to be approved through them.
So in a nutshell, we're not going to be able to...
You're not with the major cigarettes. You may be able to with a low-end company that's searching for business. But your major cigarettes, no ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, appreciate it.
Madam Speaker, may I follow up on that question?
Please do.
I just want to clarify, first of all, we wouldn't seek a state license. And we don't think one is required for us to operate in Indian country. What we would do is we would seek to buy, initially we've made contact with other wholesalers that are not licensed in the state of Oklahoma. They're licensed by another state, and it's a state that doesn't have an agreement with the state of Oklahoma. So that would be our first place to go, would be to purchase merchandise from them and bring it directly into Indian country. And so we think we have a pretty good case doing it that way without a state license. So we would not seek a state license in this arrangement, just to clarify.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes. We've fussed and fought about this for 2 years. And all this time, we've sat here and tried to pass acts, and we hadn't included these people that's been working for us for years, since we had these smoke shops. These people were asked, some of them, to go into business for smoke shops. And they went into the business, and they helped the nation out, and they paid us taxes. And, you know, we're talking about buying out order shops. If we're talking about buying out, let's just buy them all out, and then we can take over the smoke shop business. But as long as we have asked them to do this, I think we need to back them, and if we're going to change this, I think there needs to be a committee formed out of the smoke shops to meet with a committee out of this council and sit there together and work this out if we want to do it. But we talk about Walmart and Quick Trip. Quick Trip is the biggest backer of the First Nation. One First Nation, One Nation, or what you want to call it. These businesses are trying to drive Native Americans out of business. And that's their sole purpose. And we need to think about that also. You know, when we give up a business, they consider it, you know, a victory for them. And I can't understand at all why we're not communicating more with the smoke shops, because they've lived with this on a daily basis. We've got people out there that own the property, that are receiving families, and there'll be anywhere from 1 to 9 people out of that family that receive a monthly benefit from these smoke shop operators. They're paying leases up to $5,000 a month. They're also employing people, and you go down and check your smoke shops, and they're going to be employing Cherokees. And that's the type of thing that we back. We've got a business over here at CNI that we don't receive a benefit one out of, but it furnishes jobs for Cherokees. That's what these people are doing, plus they're paying the nation so much a month, a year, and I can't be for this. I'm just going to have to say I can't be for it. And until we can all get together, and that'd be the administration and us and smoke shop operators, and have our own meetings or call a special meeting, whatever you want to do, and talk about this and see who can give and who can take and who can take and who can give. I'll be for that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to have Ms. Knight come up and give us a scenario if we don't, what's going to happen if we don't get a compact with the state. I'd like to hear that portion of it.
Melanie, can you address his concern there?
There's a couple of things that factor into that. One is the arbitration that's been ongoing, and it's been fully briefed, and we expect a decision from the arbitrators. We don't know what that decision is going to be. The state has, as Mr. Hoskin clearly mentioned, the state has been accused by us of waiving breaching the compact by waiving the sales tax. They've accused us of breaching the compact on the retail-to-retail sales. So those allegations went back and forth. I don't know what the arbitrators are going to rule. That decision is far overdue. It should have been rendered last year. So we could go along for 1 month, we could go along for many more months without having a decision from that arbitration panel. Once they decide, though, it's my assumption that they will say this current compact is not workable and direct us to negotiate a new compact. At that point, we're without a compact, and that's probably going to be the point that we do become without a compact. Our best option would be to try to negotiate a compact before the arbitrators rule, so that there's no break in the compact. If we find ourselves without a compact, the state rate goes into effect. So for all the businesses that acquire their cigarettes from state licensed entities, as the wholesaler that just spoke with you, he'd have to charge the full state rate of 75%. So that's where we would stand. And obviously it would be the worst case scenario for all the retail shops.
Mr. Soap and then Mr. Baker.
Ms. Knight, what's the expected time frame of a new compact negotiation to take place? How long would you expect that to last, or could it last? Or?
Well, it's really hard to say. We came very close before this all went to arbitration, and we just backed away from negotiations. We came very close both on the language and on what kind of rate the state would agree to, and we got them down to 65%. What we've done is we've reopened negotiations with that same document just to say, where are we, and can we negotiate this rate further? Are we still on the same page with the language of the compact? And those discussions have been very preliminary, so I don't know that I can say how long it would take. I believe Diane Hammonds might be in the audience. Is she? Is she right outside? She just stepped out. She's been heading up our negotiations, so she may have a better idea as to how quickly that can move with the governor's office. As I said, obviously we'd like to try to get as close to agreement before the arbitrator's decision comes down. The question is,
Ms. Hammonds, can you come forward?
I can, ma'am, thank you.
The question is, how long do we expect we can negotiate until we can negotiate a compact?
I don't really have any idea. We've expected a decision.
Ms. Hammond, may I interrupt? What's the question you're answering so that everyone understands?
The question was, how long would we expect compact negotiations to take place in the event that we go through, the arbitrator says, we need to redo this contract, so then at some point the tobacco smoke shop owners are going to be feeling this tax increase essentially by itself. And I mean, a compact is something that we have to do regardless, correct?
Well, it really depends.
At some point in time, I mean, that's been status quo, let's say.
It really depends on what the arbitrators decide. And I think that regardless of how they decide the breach issue, the state breach, did we breach, did the tax commission overstep their bounds, regardless of how they decide those four issues, I think that the probability is the end result is that we will have to negotiate a new compact. We have been expecting that arbitrator's decision since early last fall, and I've frankly been surprised that we haven't received it before now. Some of the same arbitrators are involved in the Osage case, so it may be that they're trying to have those come out concurrently. I don't know. I mean, it's just like waiting for a decision from an appellate court. You don't really have any idea. It could be today. It could be next month. I don't know.
But as far as continued negotiations for a resolute compact, well, in your experience, how long would that last or take? 6 months, a year, 2 days?
Well, it's been a long time. A lot of factors depend on it. You could do it as quickly as a couple of months if everything falls correctly. But it has been a matter of months typically with us. And one thing that may happen is if the arbitrators decide that there's a breach on one side or the other and that there's no compact at all, then the state will probably immediately go to the no compact rate. So it seems to me that negotiating a compact, and we've made inquiries and made steps in that direction all through this, that negotiating a new compact before that decision of the arbitrators hits would be to everyone's advantage. So we tried to do that. We've had discussions all along.
Mr. Soap?
Was there a time frame in there? Is this it's more than 6 months probably, or?
To negotiate one?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just looking for the expert opinion here.
Boy, it's hard to get a lawyer.
I mean, I can tell you what I would do if I was negotiating these instances, but
Well, I would just say...
The legislature's in session now. So if we reached an agreement with the state, I mean, it could happen as quickly as within a month or 6 weeks, it seems to me. If the legislature's in session, if we had a meeting of the council, if there was an accord between the parties, it could happen quickly. It has not, through all the times that I've been involved in it, even when Mr. Fight was alive, happened quickly. But it could.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't give you a more definite answer.
Is that all, Mr. Soap?
Just, thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Yes, and we, as David said, a lot of these smoke shop owners were approached to go into the business within the 14 counties and open these smoke shops and create jobs for Cherokees and create revenue for the Cherokee Nation, and there was an advantage to tobacco within the nation. Now, if Quick Trip and Walmart and First Nation and all these folks have been worrying about these smoke shops so badly so that they can jerk the advantage out from under them, then has administration considered if these tax rates have to go into effect to where they lose their advantage, maybe a formula of 8 or 10 gaming machines to supplement the income so that they stay in business?
Are you asking a question?
That is a question.
Ms. Knight, do you want to respond?
No, we haven't considered that particular option, but I will tell you what we have talked about. This is taxation, and what you're talking about is profit and buying power. The buying power of a big retailer versus the buying power of a small retailer. And so there are options for that. Either the small retailers form a coalition and become a big retailer and up their purchasing power. Another option is we've drafted in a proposed bill for the state legislature to do pricing very similar to the way the alcohol industry is, that the pricing has to be the same for everyone if it's sold in Oklahoma. So there are options for dealing with that. We don't think that adjusting the tax is the appropriate way of dealing with that.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
I'm finished.
Ms. Jordan?
My concern regarding this act is the hundreds of families that appear to be employed in this industry at this point in time. I'm also concerned about the leaseholders that receive money because that involves hundreds of more families that might not get their money if we make these changes today. I agree with Councilman Thornton that we need to form a committee. That committee needs to have everybody's input, and I've not heard that everybody's had their input considered at this point in time. When we have an industry that may affect up to, let's say, 400 families, by our decision today, folks, we need to study it more. And I'm voting against this legislation today for that very purpose. I think we're forgetting about the families that are involved. And I think Councilman Fishinghawk just made a good point to me. If the state of Oklahoma lost an industry that affected 400 to 500 employees, they would be outraged. We need to be outraged the same way. This could affect up to that many families. And we need to give consideration and give them input, which I've not heard. No one has contacted me. I've just studied this from both sides. And I don't think the families have been given input into this new legislation. So for that purpose, I say send this back to the drawing board and let's all talk about it through a committee process where that these folks get an opportunity to give their input.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Bob?
I would like to suggest that as long as Councilor Buzzard's, as long as the discussion has gone to fruition to his satisfaction, I would like to go ahead, and I know Councilor Watts has someone she wants to speak, and I would also request that out of respect for the office, the former chief of the Delaware Nation, Joe Brooks, has asked for a couple minutes. And then I would move that after that we move to a vote.
Okay, we have a couple of council people before we allow them to speak. Ms. Fishing Hawk?
Okay. Councilwoman Jordan made my point when I was going to say if an industry took a 400-job hit, we'd see it on the news, folks. And that's what I feel like this is going to end up being.
Ms. Fulbright?
Yes, I'm sure I hold a different perspective than most of the other council people. I'm really against what Quick Trip has been trying to do to us to stomp Native people into the ground. But quite frankly, when I was campaigning, smoke shop people were pretty hostile to me. But I have a landowner who is my next door neighbor that has been wonderful to me, and our families are very congenial. I would never vote to hurt him. But I want us to look at this from all sides. A long time ago, when they asked all these people to get into the smoke shop business, it was for employment, and I really think the smoke shop owners, not the people who lease the land, have been making an awful lot of money in their pockets, which is fine. It gives a little dribble into the tribe. I would like for there to be a way that the tribe receive a little bit more money from it. I am against the bill because of my next door neighbor. And I will be voting against it, but I'm telling you, when you're out there campaigning and all the smoke shop owners are against you and hostile, and they don't want your sign put up, and they talk really bad about you, and they don't even know you, I didn't get a very warm, fuzzy feeling, I'll tell you for sure.
Ms. Fulbright? Mr. Crittenden?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Excuse me. I've got a head cold. You know, to me, this isn't politics. This is just doing what's right. These folks are people. They're scattered across our 14 counties. We've heard all kinds of reasons that they're in the business. Mr. Thornton made a suggestion that maybe they need to be on a committee or whatever to decide what kind of compact or what kind of legislation we might want to look at going on down the road. Seems like we've looked at this thing, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4 times, seems like. I think we ought to just, until the arbitration is settled, I think we ought to just keep moving on with what we've got and not rocking the boat too much. And these people are in tune, they know what's going on. You know, if there's something looming, they'll let us know about it, and they'll get with us, and they'll help us with the compact ideas and suggestions. So I think we need to just leave them alone, vote this act down, and get on with business.
I'm looking for some way to go ahead and call the question, but I know that I've asked for Joe Lane, and he's asked for former Chief Brooks. After that, can we limit it or move on?
I'd like to hear from some of the spokespersons for the smoke shop owners, and do you feel like 3 minutes is a fair amount of time for you to make your presentation in regard to this legislation? I know Ms. Cowan-Watts has already asked for Mr. Lane, and Dr. Cobb has asked for the former chief of the Delaware to speak. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this as on behalf of the smoke shop owners? And your name is?
Tony Grantham with Sunflower Supply.
Okay, Tony. Mr. Lane, would you come forward, please?
Yes,
for about 3 minutes.
Thank you.
We know Mr. Lane.
That's kind of spooky that my livelihood's put down to 3 minutes. It's just scary. You know, I know the administration is trying to do the right thing, but what they're legislating or asking you to vote on is absolutely ludicrous. It'll put us out of business. Any way you cut it, any way you put the numbers to it. You know, when we started this thing, and let me give you a background. When we started going to a compact back in 1992, we went to the state. We didn't have a compact. The state wanted a compact. We went to the state and negotiated a 25% compact. 25% of the state's tax. And we're told by the legislators that that would be ongoing forever. It's kind of like our treaties that we used to have. And immediately, when this one ran out 10 years ago, or 3 years ago, they jumped it. And because of gaming, every tribe jumped on it because they wanted to make more money out of gaming and threw us under the bus. And I apologize if we offended you. It wasn't me, but I'm sorry.
I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay. But, you know, I've got 3 minutes here to explain the history of my business, which I've been in 26 years. And I hate to lose it just because of a 3-minute vote. Please give us a chance. I just soon have this thing go away. But you need to know the background of where we are and how we got here. Please form the committee, let us have some input, or vote it down, and let's deal with it at a later date when it's important. And that's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cindy Brooks, would you please come forward? Joe, you did that in less than 3 minutes. You just can't.
Well, I've been in the smoke shop business altogether 35 years, and I kind of feel the same as Joe, and I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to come up here for a month. I'll keep it short and to the point. I fought against the compact in 1992 because I said to your all's chief man, Wilma Mankiller, if you let him in the door, it'll never be ending. The United States Supreme Court had already ruled in me and my brother's favor on a smoke shop at 101st and Memorial in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the first tribal smoke shop ever opened on Creek grounds, that the state of Oklahoma had no jurisdiction whatsoever on Indian land, and they would strongly suggest that we come back and work out a compact, a fair compact. So I went along with the 25%. But I also heard the same words, the 25% would be ongoing, it'd never go away. I'm going to tell you all the same, I'm getting old. I'm going to retire. In November, I'll be 62. I'm quitting. Hopefully, I can keep my daughter in the smoke shop business. She wants to take over where I left off. But if we pass any tax increase, and I'll just be truthful with you all, the extra $1.50 a carton to the non-border smoke shops is very unfair. It already put me out of business in Oshaleta, Oklahoma. You can ask Dr. Cobb. He drives by it every day and probably about cries because it's not there anymore. The $1.50 put me out of business because all the smoke shops in Bartlesville had a $1.50 advantage plus my delivery charge, $2.25. 9 months later, I was broke. If y'all, I agree with what several council members have said, if y'all pass any tax increase, we'll all be gone. If you all don't start fighting with the state of Oklahoma for a fair compact, I'll guarantee you when your casino compacts run out, they're not going to be satisfied till they got it all. Stand up and fight for your tribal sovereignty. It even says in the Cherokee Constitution that you all have a right to charge income tax. Why are we paying federal income tax, me out here as a business owner on Cherokee land? Why am I paying federal income tax when the Cherokee Nation has the right to adopt their own? Stand up and fight for your treaty rights, because if we don't, between the Bureau and Philip Morris and Quick Trip, they're going to take over Oklahoma. It won't be 5 years from now, I'll assure you, if you don't stand up and fight for what's right. The state of Oklahoma is going to come in and try to pass legalized gambling. Then you know who's going to come in and take over all the Native American smoke shops? And Oklahoma is a non-public law 280 state. The state of Oklahoma has not one bit of jurisdiction on Indian land. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Chief Brooks. Chris Soap, oh no, I'm sorry, Tony. Tony, would you mind telling us your last name again? I apologize.
Grantham, Tony Grantham.
Grantham.
My name is Tony Grantham, and I'm the General Manager for Sunflower Supply. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for allowing me to speak. And council people, I appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank many of my customers and friends back here. It's been our pleasure to be in this industry since about 1991, 1992, just to give you a real quick background. And Sunflower's business has been built primarily with the partnership of the Native American people of Oklahoma, and we're very proud of that. One of the issues, and Counselor, I certainly wouldn't want to say anything against what you're saying you can do with out-of-state wholesalers, but something that I want to make clear that Mr. Campbell spoke to is Philip Morris has started this procedure, and they've come up with something for wholesalers this year called qualified sales. And all that means is they look at everything that leaves our warehouse, and they have set an arbitrary number at this time, I think it's 60%. Yes. That they have to know where 60% of your product goes to. And if you pass that number, then you're allowed to stay on direct with Philip Morris. Now, I will tell you that is nationwide. It is not only Oklahoma. The thing that scares me, can we get to that 60% number? Possibly, probably so. Will I have to tell some of my native customers that I can no longer serve them? Probably so. Now, what does that mean to them? Can they go to another wholesaler? They could. The thing that you need to understand and be aware is it won't stay at 60%. As Chief Brooks said, that number is going to change. It's going to go to 70%, 80%. I will assure you that Quick Trip is very much aware of what's going on in Oklahoma, and they are very much in, I hesitate to say control of the Oklahoma legislature, but believe me, their lobbying force is very strong, and they have their ear. It's going to be very difficult. I won't tell you that you can't open a wholesale and get product in, but probably what is going to happen is you're going to bounce from supply to supply to supply, and you're going to see that cost go from one price to another price to another price, and unfortunately, as you're bouncing to wholesalers, your retail shops aren't going to have the product. Plain and simple. It's a very complicated business and very difficult. Philip Morris, Reynolds, all of the majors have an allocation system whereby wholesalers can only buy a certain amount of product based on their previous sales for that quarter. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes months to get an approval to get extra sales. There's a lot of hurdles to cross. I admire the fact that you're looking at what are your options, what can we do to keep these good people in business. But it's going to take a lot of work. There's a lot of issues in Oklahoma. Someone said, hey, let's keep the compact the way it is. Just real quickly, I will tell you, some of you know, but everyone should be aware, and especially council should be aware, the Modocs have a 25% compact that does not have an expiration date. Yes, they're a small tribe, and maybe that's not a lot, but in the compact, there's a most favored nation clause. I feel strongly that should be pushed. Don't know what can be done, but I will tell you that there was one time not very many months ago, and some of y'all know this, that the governor was willing to accept something considerably less than $6.65. It was in the $4 range. I sat in those meetings, and he said, let's sign this and we'll do it. We don't care about collecting our part and rebating back to the tribes and everything. You'll just pay a flat rate. Now, is that still the case today? I can't answer that. But there are a lot of things that can be done and need to be done. But the most pressing issue, I will tell you, is not the state of Oklahoma for these smoke shops. It's the Philip Morris and the R.J. Reynolds, and that number is looming. The date is March 28th, and we have been put on notice. I know Mr. Campbell has, and I promise you every wholesaler in the country that if we don't get to those numbers and find a way to satisfy them, we will not be able to buy that product, and if we can't buy that product, then your shops cannot buy that product. Just want to make you aware of those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Soap?
Yeah, I think my question is just, we're talking about a 65% tax increase for most of the people, shop owners and so forth. But my question is what's the consequences of paying 100% tax increase if in fact the compact is not agreed to and signed off on? Is that...
Are you asking
something? Yeah,
Mike?
I was just wondering if one of the people that got up and spoke, what the...
Mr. Lane, you want to...
Yes.
Do you have like 4-month reserve, or is it 2 years?
All I can do is give you an example of what had happened to me. If I paid the $10.50 to $10.30, the state will not rebate but on a quarterly basis. I would immediately be priced, I would probably be $4, $5 higher than my competition, which would be Walmart, Quick Trip, and most of the grocery stores. And I could not afford to tie up millions of dollars waiting for the state to rebate to the tribe to rebate to us. And I think we even tried to address this at one time. We set aside some money to carry us through, accounts receivable money. It was you had the right intention and the right effort, but it just wasn't enough money for all of us. It would have to be millions of dollars you'd set aside. Hundreds of millions probably. And I don't think you could afford to do it. I can't afford to carry that much accounts receivable. That's just economics.
Right, that's buying power and
Yes.
advantage. So.
The Choctaws and the Chickasaws are doing it down on the southern border because they have a $10 advantage over Texas. And they can afford to do it because they operate their own stuff. And it's all tied together with gaming, convenience stores, gasoline, smoking. They're all tied together because they own their own operation. We don't. We market a tax advantage. You've seen our locations. We're in alleys. We're in back roads. Quick Trips would not come and buy our businesses for locations. So we got to market a tax advantage. It's the only thing we've ever had. And everybody knows it. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lane.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
make one more quick comment?
In regard to his question?
Yes.
Okay, please do.
I heard the comment a while ago on the same question that the smoke shop owners were making more than the Cherokee Nation on taxes and also the landowners. That's not the case. And I'm here to tell you that my Claremore shop is in great danger right now. I'm going broke in the next 2 months if something doesn't happen. I'd be glad to open up my books and show you profit and loss statements for the last 3 years, 4 years, ever since this has been going on. Any council member that wants to come by there, I'll share that with you. The landowner's making more than I am. The Cherokee Nation's making more than I am in just taxes. This $1.50 a carton that you all passed on the non-borderline smoke shops is going to bankrupt a bunch of smoke shops if something doesn't change. A compact needs to be negotiated for all smoke shops. And I agree that there is a clause in the compacts that says a favorites try back. We could come right back on the state on that. They're not honoring it. 25%. So for that reason, I'm asking you all to support Chief Gray over there. He's a friend of mine. Stand firm. Don't let the state run over you anymore. If you do, they're going to end up owning your casinos and everything else in the Cherokee Nation. Thank you.
Madam
Ms.
Chair
Camelot,
and body, I respectfully call for the question.
Second.
question has been called and seconded. The motion on the floor is to approve this legislation that is before you.
Roll call.
Madam Chair, can I withdraw that motion then, since I've had the discussion I'd like to have?
No.
We need up or down vote.
Mr. Henry?
Yeah, if you would really just be confusing the vote if you changed it right now. Right now, it's a motion to approve. If you wish to vote to approve it, you would vote yes. If you wish to not approve it, you would vote no.
Roll call.
Roll call vote. And yes, you approve it. No, you do not.
Don Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
No.
China Glory Jordan,
No.
Curtis Snell,
No.
Chris Soap,
No.
David Thornton,
No.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Bill John Baker,
No.
Jack Baker,
No.
Harley Buzzard,
No.
Julia Coates is absent, Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
No.
Jody Fishing Hawk,
No.
Meredith Fraley,
No.
Janelle Fulbright.
No.
We have 16 nays.
The motion fails. And I appreciate the comments of everyone that has been here, and thank you for coming. It helps the council very much when we have your input. Okay, the next item is item 13. And Judge Jennifer Barker Johnson. Please be quiet. Ms. Barker Johnson has a presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am here on behalf of the Elected Officials Compensation Committee.
Jennifer, can you hold just a moment? Close the doors.
You have all the time you need.
Thank you for your patience. Good. For those of you who have not met Jennifer Barker Johnson, she is an attorney, she's a professor, and she's also a judge, a municipal judge. In which cities?
Apache, Elgin, Fletcher, and Sterling.
And she was very active in the last compensation committee recommendations, so we appreciate your coming back and helping us again.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Our committee met originally on January 16th, and our first charge is, of course, to appoint that fifth member according to Cherokee Nation law. We unanimously approved Joe Haley of Muskogee to serve in that fifth seat, and Mr. Haley accepted that particular position as well. On January 21st, we met to deliberate the committee's recommendations regarding salary changes, if any, with regard to all elected officials for the Cherokee Nation. After reviewing the data that we received from the Cherokee Nation's legal team, we used that data to examine what was going on within the other tribes, what the other tribes collectively, individually, also what they were doing as far as averages were concerned. We thought that was pretty important to consider according to our charge. We found it very notable that under the current salary structure of the Cherokee Nation, this council is about 6.5% below comparable 2007 averages for all other tribes. The deputy chief is about 28.4% below comparable averages, and the chief is about 5.34% below those comparable averages. So originally when we looked at the data, we thought this was quite remarkable and wanted to point that out. At our last consideration of this, we also noted this fairly similar changes, and it had only gone up just a little bit from that because there was not a raise instituted since that last time. As a result, in considering cost of living, the increase in obligations of this particular body and of those of the deputy chief and the chief, the committee has recommended a 5% base salary increase per year for the remaining 2007 term. So that would mean there would be 5% this year, 5% next year, 5% the following year in that respect. And we feel that this would help bring the tribe back in line with what the other tribes are doing. And granted, we recommend this based upon the fact that we believe you guys are doing a great job with regard to the resources you have, the charges you have with regard to everything that we're expecting as tribal members of you all. And we want to make sure that you guys are compensated accordingly so we can continue to have the bright people that are on the tribe and tribal council at this time in the deputy chief and chief spots. So with that 5% increase in 2008, 2009, and again, this doesn't recognize what the increases in the other tribes will be because we have no idea what that would be. But with that proposed increase just for the first year, all three areas are still below those comparable averages. So we didn't want to do anything extreme on the front end. We wanted to step this up on a 5% basis per year after that. We felt that that's fair. We wanted to also recognize necessarily this is the most fair and equitable base salary that we can find for you all, and we want to necessarily help the tribe to grow and make that easier for you all in your service.
Any questions for Ms. Barbara Johnson, Mr. Henry?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just would like to commend the committee on their efforts in this matter, and also to remind the council that's why this legislative act was passed. It was a conscious effort to depoliticize elected official raises. That's why you take it to a citizen committee who do research based on facts and comparable salaries. And the work that they've done here, like as Ms. Barbara Johnson just stated, still doesn't even get you to the average at the end of the increases. But I think the comparables are good. I think the stepped increases are good, and the fact that this has come from an independent citizen body is the most important, and I would really wish you would strongly consider it.
Dr. Cobb?
I just wanted to say, just reiterate that. Somewhere I have it. I actually downloaded it and printed it, but I can't find it. I was actually really impressed. It was obvious that there was some time taken on this, and it was. I wasn't expecting anything that detailed. I was pretty impressed with it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Mr. Thornton. Sorry.
Ms. Johnson, I'd like to apologize to you for having to do this the second time.
That's okay.
It's been probably last year that the council went in and took away the old act and said, no, we're not going to accept any salary increase. I'm going to stick with that. And I'm really sorry that you had to come in the second time and do this. I was for it the first time. And if we'd left it alone, we would have never had to worry about it again. And that's the way I feel about it. But I appreciate the time. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
And Mr. Crittenden.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have one comment. Seems like in this cost comparison and everything, we're kind of picking on the deputy a little bit as far as that. Did we give any consideration to moving him on up past that 5%, whatever? And
We did discuss it very briefly, but we wanted to basically stay in a standard scale if we could.
Because even if you
to
look
avoid
at
confusion, the public.
I mean, even 4, 5, 6 years from now, he'll still be below the
Quite a bit below the averages.
and I'd just like to go on record saying I don't think that's hardly fair, but
And again, what we have put before you today is merely a recommendation.
yes,
It is
I understand that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Garvin?
I think it's a real good plan, and I think the original instructions were to come up with something for 2011. So with that in mind, I'd like to keep it at 2011 and not be voting myself a raise right now that the new people could benefit. So I'm going to make a motion, we table this and try to get that straightened out.
Table the recommendations because we don't have any legislation before us.
Yes, I make a motion that we table this for the next month.
Okay, moved in second. Any discussion, but the question's been called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here today.
I'd like to thank the council for allowing us all to represent this body in this manner, and we all really appreciate that. Thank you.
Jennifer, can you hold just a moment?
I would also like to thank her, because I think you had to come from Norman, didn't you?
More.
More?
Yeah.
So thank you for your work on this.
Anytime for the charge.
And Mr. Ketcher, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, I didn't acknowledge you. He also served on the committee.
Yeah, I've always thought that we should face for the help that we have in the Cherokee. We may get a lot of people out there that's not for raising the salary of our people who work with us. Some have even said, well, I would work for the nation for free. Well, they don't know how much time it takes to do that. As you remember the last, when I was on the council the last time, we raised our salaries and we got big disturbance out there saying, they shouldn't be doing that. Of course, at that time, we raised it ourselves, I guess, as a council. But now that we have a independent group that made the recommendation, it's up to you to also work on it and determine whether you accept that determination and make probably any changes that you want to do. But that was what we came up with, and we thought it was fair to start out that way and just get it in increments rather than all at one time. So, and I've always felt this way. You have to take care of your people. Somebody said I would just like to do that work just as an honor. Well, you can't eat honor or pour it in your gas tank or anything like that. I know you guys are out more sometimes than you get for your travel, things like that. So we need to consider our people that, these are employees too, they have to, although they have to run for the office, but I think they should get a fair compensation for what they do. I've been there, did that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ketcher. Ms. Jordan?
And John, I'd also like to thank you for your service on this committee.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to make an announcement about the lunch?
Yes.
Before we continue on.
If I could just add on to my comments, our counterparts, the Cherokee Nation Youth Council, is holding a homemade chili sale in the financial break room from 11 to 1. For $3 you get chili and drink or a Frito chili pie and drink. I would like to ask all the council and everyone that's here in the audience today, let's go out and support those kids because they are the ones that are going to be sitting here someday. They're in training now, and I think that's a great program. So if we could, that financial break room, where is that at? It's a new building behind
That's right. The little breezeway from the main complex on this end.
$3. It's a good meal.
Wonder if they have the capability to bring that into us.
We could
go after it if they have that.
What if we call them and ask if they could bring that over, if you all would all stay and eat lunch here, and then we'd have a working lunch? Would everybody be for that?
Is that the will of the council, committee?
Yes. I'd rather see us go over and let's rearrange the...
I'm sorry?
I'd like to have all reports in writing and do all of the nominations in toto. And let's just go over there.
I think Ms. Fishing Hawk had a question from on one of the reports.
But we can still have in writing and then entertain her question and move
Mr.
forward, right?
Henry?
Yeah, if there's any questions concerning the reports, have them require it in writing and have the question in writing and have a 24-hour turnaround requirement to answer that question. Is it a report on the nomination or a report on a question on the report?
On reports.
On report?
Even just have her
If
ask
it's
one.
24 hours, that'd be great. I'll go with that.
I will make that the
'Cause I know
requirement
you-
for the administration.
Okay, Ms. Calm-Watts, are you opposed to our going after the lunch and bringing it here? Is that what you're saying?
I just think it would, because they're probably trying to make money at their deal, and if we ask them to come around to just accommodate the 17 or 16 of us.
Well, they have to serve it anyway in something. And what I'm wondering is, do they have that something that can be transported over here to save time?
I just imagine they probably wouldn't have the box lids to do that. I mean, if it was a few, that would probably be all right, but 20.
What's a pleasure?
I would like to say that I think that would, I tend to agree, I think that would be a good show of support. If we could work it out where we could go over there. If we just can't get this done, we can't do it.
We've got 1 hour because they are closing at 1.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so are you proposing to what?
To just act, so we do the report in writing, she's going to do the questions in writing.
Continue
2 through
here.
9, yeah, 2 through 9 in toto. And so we would only have 1, 2, or 3 separate items beyond the nominations to do.
Okay. I need a motion to, you made the motion, I need a second. Okay, moved and seconded to accept the reports as written, except for 1. And that's Ms. Fishinghawks, right? The question you had?
Yeah, I'll get it to Todd. Don't worry about it.
Oh, don't worry about it?
No, I'll
Okay.
just get it to Todd.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Now, there are no old business, we'll move on down to new business. And are you proposing, Ms. Calm-Watts, items
2 through 9.
2
We'll have to
through 9?
discuss one separately.
Okay, so we'll take item 1 first. And that is the council's election commission nominees. There are Ms. Calico, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Schellenberger, and Mr. Van. May I please finish? Are those people present? Mr. Schellenberger and Mr. Johnson? Is Mr. Schellenberger here? Okay. And Ms. Calico is not here. Okay, we'll take Ms. Calm-Watts.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Martha Calico and Roger Johnson as our election commission nominees.
Motion's been made to select Martha Calico and Roger Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Jordan.
In reviewing their resumes, I did see that 2 out of the 4 did say they were tribal members. I just want to make sure everybody on this list is a tribal member. Is that correct? Okay. So the 2 that you are nominating are both tribal members.
Mr. Johnson is at the back of the room, and he used to work for our casino at Cherokee Casino in the construction group. He actually, I know Buell knows him because he's Buell's constituent, but I also know him because he was a Boilermaker with my grandpa back in the day. So he's a tribal citizen from around in that area up north, and we would like representation from up north, not just from here and down south. So
I'm just making sure that we're in compliance with.
Mr. Johnson, you want to come forward? Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm proud to be here. I was very humbled and pleased whenever I was asked to accept the nomination for this position. I retired from C&E 2 years ago, and honestly looking for more to do, I guess. I served for almost 4 years in the construction group with C&E, and during that period of time I made a lot of decisions in the casino construction business, and I think those decisions were based on very sound judgment, and I would use that same judgment to make decisions concerning any of the election issues that come forward.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are to select two committee members, and she's proposing Ms. Calico and Mr. Johnson as the nominations to be selected. Any other discussion? All in favor of the...
I nominate Mr. Van as well. He has
Madam Speaker, point of
experience.
order. That would be, we need to vote up or down on this motion, and I will not accept a friendly amendment.
So you've married them together, and that's our only choice, take it or leave it.
It's a motion. That's all there is.
So we're not going to vote on who is going to be our representative. It's just going to be up or down.
And then you can go and say whoever you want after that if it fails.
Mr. Hembry?
I'm sorry, I had stepped out. What is...
Motion is from Ms. Calmoise, is she's nominating together Martha Calico and Roger Johnson as the nominees. And as you know, we can nominate two people.
Right.
Okay? She's proposing we nominate those two people in total.
Okay. Well, on any motion, you can call division and vote on each one of them separately.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Baker?
I propose that we voted on separately.
Right.
Call for both questions then.
Okay, the question's been called. Those in favor of Ms. Calico signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, same sign. Okay, Ms. Calico is one of the nominees. Those in favor of Mr. Johnson signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
We have one no.
Record me as
It's not necessary.
I was a no as well.
Okay, we have two no's. Would the no's raise your hands so we'll know how many for sure we have?
If we vote no, then we get to vote for the rest of them eventually?
No,
We're done.
we have two people to nominate. And we've already nominated Ms. Calico. Now we're nominating Mr. Johnson, approving his nomination. Mr. Hembry?
Yes, you're voting yes or no on Mr. Johnson at this time. If his nomination fails, then you reopen it up for
Right.
further nominations.
Mr. Thornton?
It's hard to understand this, because I thought this was trying to pick someone for the council, to represent the council, and nominations are closed. Someone made one nomination and they closed the nominations. Is that right? Can you close the nominations after making one?
No, the process works like this, that if you had someone that you wanted to bring forward, and this was done several months ago, bring them forward, bring your resume. These are the four people that were brought forward. Okay, now there was a motion to select two of those from that four, Ms. Calico and Mr. Johnson. Ms. Calico, and then division was called.
Was they brought forward for nominations, or was it?
Probably. They were brought forward. You were all asked to bring names to people to this committee. Yeah, and those are the four that were brought forward. Now,
We're voting on Mr. Johnson now because a division was called.
right. So if you're in favor of Mr. Johnson, vote yes. If you're not in favor of Mr. Johnson, vote no. If Mr. Johnson passes, he is a nominee to be sent to full council. If it fails, you can choose from the other two.
Thank you, Mr. Hembry. Okay. Do we want a revote on that since it was not clear?
Roll call.
I'm sorry, Ms. Calmwat?
Roll call.
Roll call on Mr. Johnson.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
Okay, now we're done with one position.
Yeah, Martha Calico.
Okay, so we've got these three other people.
Yes.
And if we vote yes, then Mr. Johnson gets it. If we vote no, then it opens it up for the other two.
Yeah, that's correct.
Someone may make a motion to consider them.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, yes, you're in favor of Mr. Johnson. No, you aren't.
Cherokee, yes. Bill England?
Yes.
Bill John Baker,
No.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Bradley Cobb,
Yes.
Joe Crittenden,
No.
Jody Fishinghop,
No.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
No.
Tina Glory Jordan,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
Yes.
David Thornton. We have 9 yea, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
9 yes, 7 no. Ms. Count Watts?
Move to approve 2 through 9 in toto.
Second.
Motion carries on Mr. Johnson, and then we have a motion to approve items 2 through 9 in toto. Ms. Fishinghop?
I would like to know on 2 through 9, tell me which ones are Cherokee members and which ones aren't Cherokee members. I'd like to know which ones aren't.
We have a motion, and do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, now we're open for discussion, and Ms. Fishinghop, you want to know who are and are not.
Yep.
Mr. Carson, are you addressing that?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry. We want to know.
The question is, of these nominees, who is not Cherokee?
I believe I can answer that for nearly all of them. There are 1 or 2 that I perhaps can't give you definitive answers on, Madam Councilwoman. Starting with the ones who are involved in the business activities, I don't know Mr. Agent myself, who is the nominated for the editorial board of directors. Mr. Ballou, who is being nominated for a board member of Cherokee Nation Metal Works. That is a new company that will be part of the C&I world. He currently serves on the C&I and CNB boards, and he is a Cherokee from Cherokee County. Adolf Lechtenberger has long served on the board of CNE and CNB. He is a Cherokee tribal citizen. Jackie Bob Martin, I think, is well known to everyone in this room. He is, of course, a Cherokee citizen. Liz Grigsby, I cannot say for certain.
She is.
I know
Okay.
she is.
Okay, very good. Lloyd Armstrong has been chairman of the CNB Board of Directors for many years, and he is a tribal citizen. Thomas Adelson is being nominated for the CNB Board of Directors. He is not a tribal citizen. He is someone who we've recruited to the board because he has a key skill, which is he is a venture capitalist, someone who starts new businesses and invests in them. And it's a skill we've long been looking for and haven't identified someone to do. Mr. Lechtenberger, I mentioned a moment ago, who was nominated for the CNE board on the previous page. And he's a Cherokee citizen. So,
Thank you.
Hi, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to Mr. Agent. Mr. Agent is a citizen of the nation and very patriotic, what I might add.
Sitting back here.
Mr. Agent is here. Mr. Jackie Bob Martin is here. Mr. Agent, would you want to take a few moments to say something?
Thank you,
How are
Madam
you?
Speaker,
Thanks
council
for
members
coming.
that I know and those that I don't know. I've been asked to serve on the editorial advisory board. I brought in copies of my resume. You're familiar with, most of you are familiar with my experience and my commitment to serve the Cherokee people and to serve the Cherokee Phoenix and continue the progress that we made after we passed the Free Press Act and under our new editor, Brian Pollard. So pleased to be here, honored to be here and see everyone.
Thank you for coming. Any questions or comments, Mr. Agent? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bill John?
Yes. On Thomas Adelson, you say that he is not a Cherokee member, but he has expertise that you might be interested in. What do the board members, what is their compensation?
the compensation at CMB, I believe it is $12,000 a year.
Okay. And you do not think you could get him for a contract as a consultant or something along those lines for his needed services?
He is a very, if I dare say so, a very successful individual. And so he isn't in the contracting or consulting business.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the other board members, he's someone who can help us evaluate the deals that contract consultants and employees bring.
Okay. That being said, I would like to at least divide that one off for a separate vote.
All right. Call for a division on number 8. Okay? Mr. Martin, Jackie Bob Martin, did you want to come forward and say something briefly?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
after he speaks, I call for the question.
thank you.
Madam Chair, they can deliver the chili and Frito pies, they just need to know how many, and I think with the time, they're very willing to bring it over.
Yeah, I think they were concerned about accommodating everybody in that small room. Mr. Martin?
Thank you,
How are you?
Madam
Nice to
Speaker
see
and
you.
Council, for the honor to stand before you. I think most of you, or all of you know me, and I wasn't asked to make out a resume, but it would be an honor for me to serve the Cherokee people. As long as I'm able, I'm going to serve my people. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Nice to see you. Okay,
Call for the question.
The question's been called, and we have also a request for division on item 8. And so we'll take items 1 through 7 and item 9 first in toto. All those in favor of those nominees signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Now roll call on item 8, the nomination of Thomas Addison Armstrong as a board member.
Typo, Armstrong typo.
Armstrong the typo.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate to say a word on that?
Surely.
I don't want to interrupt the process. We deeply appreciate the fact that the vast majority of our board members at all of our entities are Cherokee citizens, of course, as it should be, as are the people who run those businesses. I believe very passionately in this particular nomination because what we lack really at any of our board positions, while we have some fantastic former executives, are people who are experienced in investing in new businesses and starting companies from scratch and evaluating mergers and acquisitions. And that is why I believe that to do our mission at CNB, which is just that, we need someone with this expertise. We have searched long and hard for it. And while he is not a tribal citizen, he does believe passionately in the power of the Cherokee Nation and CNB to transform Oklahoma for the better. And so we believe he is extremely important for this position.
Ms. Kamlotz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, but I think most of you know that I have a deep passion for Cherokee preference, and I personally go out and work in the community with technical folks and other folks trying to determine who we've got available for boards, for staff, for other things. And I personally don't know anyone that can do the kind of work, and Mr. Carson and I talked in depth about this position on the board, and Mr. Adelson specifically and the role that he was seeking. And even though I'm not on the CNB board, I've attended several of their meetings, and all due respect to our Cherokees on the board, we do need somebody that will spend more time and attention to the entrepreneurial aspects that I think I expect out of CNB. And although he's not Cherokee, I will be supporting Mr. Adelson's nominations for those reasons today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Buzzard?
Yes, Mr. Carson, how long have these people served on the board?
They are 3-year terms.
Councilman. Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Jordan?
Well, I cannot support, and I know this is probably an excellent individual, and Brad, I trust you in your selection many times of board members, but I cannot support anyone that's not Cherokee being put on a Cherokee Nation board. Surely out of 200,000 members, we can find one that is very capable for this position, and this individual I think might be more appropriate for a consulting position with CNB rather than a board member position. Not to take away anything from this individual, but I want to put Cherokees on Cherokee Nation boards. And I think that's what all of us here as a council need to be doing. Non-Indians do not need to be put on our boards unless 200,000 other Cherokee members are not qualified and we go through all 200,000 of them.
If I could just say in response, of course we are old friends and I respect that position tremendously. We have had non-Cherokee board members in the past of various entities. I believe CNI has had that. My cousin, Mr. Carson, is not, I think, a tribal member. And CNB has had those in the past, too. I certainly think you're quite right. And our ambition, as it is with employment, is to make every position Cherokee, from the secretaries to the CEOs. As we transition into the work we're trying to do, there is a growth period to do that. Mr. Adelson is one of the state's leading venture capitalists and investors, and that's a skill that is in short supply in any group. And that is why we think he can provide such value to us. Your point is well taken, and we do look forward to the day where Cherokees will be in every position of employment and on the board seats as well.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
And don't take me wrong, I respect Brad's opinion, I just have a difference on these board member positions.
Dr. Cobb.
And I respect your opinion, and I hope you keep fighting for your opinion. I just want to give a real quick my perspective on this from a historical standpoint. You know, whether your family originated from an upper, middle, or lower town in the original homelands, I think our history over the last 200 or so years has been a history of contact with other people, learning from those people, and integrating the best of everything from different cultures, different ways of thought, and that's how I'm viewing this. I think it's a noble pursuit, and one that we may eventually attain, to have every single person as a citizen. But I also think that there are things that you can learn from other cultures, from other people, and that's how I'm viewing this. This is nothing more than an extension of what we've been doing for 200 years, taking the best of something else and applying it to our advantage. So I will be voting yes.
Ms. Fishing-Hawk?
All due respect, Brad, I'm the one that hollers the loudest. I want all of HR to be Cherokee, so I'm going to have to vote no just because of my speech.
Any other questions, comments? Oh, Ms. Fulbright.
I usually always respect your opinion. I agree with you on this one. I just don't agree with your politics for president.
Oh, Mr. Obama. all I can say, I know we are eager to get our frito pies. That's how I see that.
Spoken like a true.
Either way, we will have an entree to the next president. So, right, with you, with Senator Clinton.
Any other questions or comments about these nominees and not the presidential?
and we know who has influence, by the way. Senator Clinton won this area, I think, 65 to 20. So you have more friends than I do, apparently. Councilwoman.
Yeah, but I'm from Washington.
We have a roll call on confirming Mr. Adelson.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Bradley Cobb,
Yes.
Joe Crittenden,
No.
Jody Fishing-Hawk,
No.
Meredith Braley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
Yes.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
No.
Tina Glory Jordan,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
Yes.
David Thornton,
No.
Kara Cowan Watts,
Yes.
Bill England,
Yes.
Bill John Baker,
No.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
we have 10 yea and 6 nays.
10 yes and 6 no. And nomination carries. Okay, item 11 is an act relating to sovereign immunity and a waiver for business activities. Who is presenting that? Todd, are you doing that?
I would defer to Councilman Baker if he wants to.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
Actually, Todd can do it. I'm a tad under the weather. This really, what it's dealing with is, several months ago, we passed some sovereign immunity that just happened to be where the chief could sign off on mundane type day-to-day operations. Well, in the mundane day-to-day operations, apparently that extended to the landfill and some other items that maybe is not mundane. And so I guess trying to be as liberal as we possibly could, we came up with $500,000. In other words, couldn't sign off. It wouldn't be mundane if it's over $500,000 liability to the tribe. And that's not tying anybody's hands, that's not doing anything, but it's just trying to be fiscally responsible that we do not get into waiving sovereign immunity on something that could be multi-million-dollar ramifications. And so that's pretty much, have I missed anything, Charles?
No, the only other thing that it adds is that it requires that that these waivers be signed by the principal chief and signed by the secretary treasurer instead of just verified. So it requires 2 signatures, and Mr. Baker is correct. It limits the amount of sovereign immunity limits the waiver amount that we are giving to the chief to $500,000. Any contracts or items above $500,000 that would require waiver of sovereign immunity would come to the council.
And I really wanted to make it a lot less than that, but a phone contract with the Cherokee Nation could maybe hit the $400,000 or $500,000 level. So I mean, I'm not just giving the farm away. I mean, we do have some mundane contracts that are in that range, and but I think it's something we need to do, and I'm going to move that we approve this act.
Second. Moved in second. Now discussion. Council, have any discussion? Mr. Carson, would you like to address that since you negotiate these?
If I may, and with all respect to Mr. Baker, who's also a good and old friend, it does cause me some concern, what we're proposing here. And let me give you a vision for what we could do and tell you a couple of anecdotes about our daily life on the business side of things. Probably nothing spends more of the precious time of the 9 lawyers who work at C&B and trying to figure out what to do about sovereign immunity. This affects us just as it affects a tribal contract here entered into by an administrator. And so when we have companies that require bonding, for example, we have to have a waiver of sovereign immunity. The existing waiver doesn't cover them, and so we don't pursue bonding activities. Let me talk about how that could affect us in our business. To my mind, and I'll speak without having, just for myself, if I may, one of the great promises of what we could do to employ lots of Cherokees across this region is to have our own construction company. You know, over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars in construction. Those are positions that could easily be filled by Cherokees. And we could have our own company. After all, we could get a company up and going just on the basis of giving them our own work. And they could achieve certain economies of scale and then go out and compete in the broader marketplace. Well, every construction company requires bonding. You have to bond to do the job. You cannot get a bond as a construction entity without a waiver of sovereign immunity. We have spent hundreds of hours trying to achieve that very thing. You can put up cash, but the cash requires a waiver of sovereign immunity. The surety won't give you a bond without a waiver of sovereign immunity. And so I guess my concern, and I say this respectfully to Mr. Baker, is that we should have a global discussion about the way these waivers affect the business activities of the tribe, because many of the activities that promise greatest employment potential for the nation require a waiver of sovereign immunity, a waiver that effectively we can't get. And so, and coming back to the council, I think this group would say for every contract, every possible contract, before you even pursue a contract, you have to know whether you can bond it. It's impractical to say, well, we're going to come to the NF committee or the rules committee, and then we'll go to the full council, just discuss the possibility of a contract. And this is true in a number of other businesses. We're in a number of businesses where if we could simply bond ourselves, we would be employing, in some cases, dozens, if not on the construction basis, hundreds of people. C&I, which is I know near and dear to many people in this room. If I can say something that was discussed at the last board meeting there. They have a construction arm that did things like where we will be this afternoon dedicating the Three Rivers Clinic in Muskogee. They want to go out and have a construction business to take that ability they've learned of and go out and do other projects for other people. They have to bond. My recommendation to them, to their board, was we shouldn't go out and be in the construction business and unless we can get essentially an easygoing waiver of sovereign immunity, because you cannot get contracts. So that is my concern about this, is that I don't know enough about how the contracts let by this government side of things does. On the business side of things, this is, I think, a deeply harmful effort. And indeed, we need to be coming to you and have discussions with council input about how we can relax the requirements for waivers of sovereign immunity if we want to employ lots of people.
Mr. Embry, do you have a comment?
Well, one thing that we need to be cognizant of is the Constitution of the Cherokee Nation itself, which specifically requires that any waiver of sovereign immunity be done specifically by resolution or enactment of the tribal council. This act was originally passed to fulfill everyday business organizations or commitments. And I would agree that, you know, if there is a need for a waiver on a doing business type of item, it shouldn't be. We have enough to do ourselves. But what's particularly troublesome, in my opinion, is that right now there is no monetary limit to this. You know, as long as you meet the requirements, you know, I don't know how it could get any more lax, to be honest with you, because there's no monetary limits. You can literally, under this act, have a waiver of sovereign immunity done that could expose the Cherokee Nation, a waiver of sovereign immunity, expose them to hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, if this, and anything of that importance should come to the tribal council for a specific waiver of sovereign immunity. Now, if we want to fulfill the original intent of this act, I would believe that it would behoove the council to place some type of monetary limit on that. $500,000. If you can't do it within $500,000, and that requires a waiver of the most precious item that we have, which is our sovereign immunity, it should come to the governing body. And that was the purpose of this act.
Mr. Baker?
Yes, and quite frankly, up until we passed this, the chief came to us every single time for a waiver of sovereign immunity. To my knowledge, in all the years that I've served, we never denied the sovereign immunity. And it was never hoops and loops and a major problem to get that. But we were aware of what was going on, and it did come to this body for review. And if we were doing a major contract, or if we were starting a new business, or if we were doing something, we were informed and in the loop, and not show up at a meeting like today to ask, here's a question sent out, what is Cherokee Nation Metalworks LLC, from a council person. Well, I'm just saying, $500,000 day-to-day operations, it's not a hassle for them to come to us for anything over that. And I think it's just good, prudent fiscal responsibility that we pass this.
Mr. Evans?
I just had a question. The difference between a contract value, which is stated on the contract, I'm just unclear, is how do you quantify a potential liability to a contract?
Depends on the contract.
Two different things there, right? I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, there's two different things. One's a contract value that says, okay, if that value exceeds this, a waiver can be done. But the other is the liability associated with breaching that contract, which would expose the assets of the nation. I'm not sure how you value that.
Todd, would you not?
Just a moment, please.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I've read about cases where the potential contingent liability associated with breaching a contract can be 10 or 20 or 100 times more than what the contract value states because of damages that's caused by it. But I'm just curious on this, how does that, I'm seeing two totally different things. Because the liability side, which I think is where maybe a lot of the, I don't know where the Constitution applies. Does the Constitution apply to the inherent liability to the Cherokee Nation that can be exposed in a non-tribal court or judicial system, and how that could relate to a risk to the assets of the nation? We're saying to contracts that involve liability or value. I see that as two separate issues.
Are you asking for a legal opinion from Mr. Emery?
Well, yes,
Are you asking for a financial
I don't know how you,
interpretation?
Let me try. Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. Contracts are what they are. You will be, it is for a certain amount. Now, this act specifically only applies to actual damages under the contract, so the terms of the contract itself would limit the exposure that you would have. The purposes of the act is contracts whose has a value or for an amount of $500,000 or less. The chief and the secretary-treasurer can sign a waiver of sovereign immunity to limit. We are delegating that precious constitutional authority to two people to waive that on contracts less than $500,000. And I think the terms of the contract itself will, since this only applies to actual damages, would actually would control. So that would be my answer.
Does that help?
Okay.
Good observation, thank you. Ms. Knight?
Madam Speaker, I don't hope to answer that question.
Oh, I
because
thought
I'm
you
not
were
sure I
going to
can
address
answer
it.
that. But I did want to address the dollar amount in here and the intention of the act. It seems that the intention of the act...
May I interrupt just a moment?
Sure.
Mr. Baker had a comment in regard to Mr. Evans.
No, go ahead, let her.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
It sounds like the intention of the act is not to hold up routine contracting. And but I would offer that there are many contracts of the nation that I think you may consider to be routine that would be caught up in this dollar limit. For example, our phone contract is more than $500,000. Our contract for the financial system support is more than $500,000. Our Microsoft contract is more than $500,000. So those are things that just keep the operations going, and I don't think it's the intention of this body to come back if we need a waiver on those. Now, we're very aggressive, I will say, from the government side, and because we have the luxury of time. We typically can delay a contract just about as long as we want to. So we're very aggressive in negotiating the jurisdiction that we want in those contracts, and we're successful a lot of times, but sometimes we're not. So that I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. Dr. Cobb?
If I may, I think we visited this when we had our Taro, last time we were here on Taro, but if Mr. Carson wouldn't mind, can you, I'm a little unclear, I want to, give me an example of a major construction project. You can pick any one that you have done or are doing, and tell me how sovereign immunity, give me some examples of how sovereign immunity came into play on those projects.
I'll give you an example. We have a company now called Cherokee CRC. Many of you know of it. It's an environmental services company. Every project they do requires bonding of some kind. Basically, and those of you who have experience in the industry more so than me will know, essentially every construction project you have to put up some kind of performance bond for it. So we have worked around that a bit in that the Bank of America line of credit, for which we have an explicit waiver of sovereign immunity from this body, we have carved out a small piece of that where we actually put up the cash and say, instead of getting a bond, we'll put up, say it's $1 million deal. And those are actually quite small. 500,000 construction project is not that big of one. We'll put up $1 million cash from our line of credit or from our stock of cash that we have at our entities and say, if something happens, we don't perform, you don't have a bond, but you can take this cash. You can't even take the cash if it didn't have that waiver of sovereign immunity, which was passed as part of the Bank of America agreement. So
it's like an umbrella.
Right, it's an umbrella, right, because the money's coming out of that line of credit. And so if they put a letter of credit up, as they're called, Bank of America says, that's fine, you've agreed that we can give the cash to the party claiming it and that it's legitimate. This will basically foreclose us from doing any construction-related activities. And it does today. Because of CRC, it's small. And so we could carve it out of the Bank of America loan. You know, the C&I construction efforts or our ambitions for CCRC2 involve routinely multi-million-dollar contracts. Say they just wanted to do the clinics construction, and we required a bond of that. Well, those were something like $30 million. We don't have enough money in the line of credit or cash to put up $30 million. They would have to post a surety bond for that. The surety bond requires a waiver of sovereign immunity, and usually one they drafted that their lawyers have. You know, these waiver issues are really vexing. There's a great story that we say at C&E where we were buying photocopiers, and we were paying cash for the photocopiers. And they still wanted a waiver of sovereign immunity, which perplexed us, because we were paying cash for these things. We weren't even doing it on credit. And they said, well, there could be warranty issues, there could be service-related liabilities on this, and we want to have a waiver for that. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of issues floating around here. You heard Melanie talk about what's happening with routine governmental contracts. You take Cherokee Nation Metalworks, which I think Councilman Baker had a good question on. It's a new C&I effort that we're trying to put together, they're trying to put together. Take that particular company. If it today to do anything in the construction-related field, and a lot of other fields too, any really government contract, you often have to put up a bond. It would seem to be a logical thing, something we would love to talk about with this council, to say, look, let Cherokee Nation Metalworks sign whatever it needs to. It doesn't expose the Cherokee government's, nation's assets in any way. Let's say they perform poorly on a contract and the bond gets called in. Well, only the assets of Cherokee Nation Metalworks are at stake. It's a limited liability company. And so nothing that affects your budget here or affects C&E or C&B would ever be touched. It is a limited liability. If we were to, say, pledge the assets of the nation, which in the Bank of America agreement, the nation is responsible in the end for that, that clearly demands the attention of this institution, because if we default, we can come back in here and really affect your day-to-day business. So that's the kind of things we're talking about, that the sovereign immunity issues are really difficult. We've hired some fantastic consultants. We have board members working on it. And in the end, we can't do construction or many government contracts because of these waiver issues.
Well, if I may ask one more to that.
Please.
So if we had our own construction corporation, would that company be an LLC, and that would essentially, the bond called in affects that LLC? It does not. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Just because it's a Cherokee Nation construction corporation company, it's part of C&I, C&B, whatever. It actually being an LLC is responsible for that. It does not expose the Cherokee Nation.
That's right.
Okay, I want to be clear on that.
That's right.
Mr. Embry, do you have a comment to that?
Madam Chairman, I think we're discussing really apples and oranges at this point. We're talking about two different entities, or two different actions. What's before you in the body right here is to limit the value of contracts, okay, that waive the immunity of the Cherokee Nation, the assets of the Cherokee Nation. Or Mr. Carson is explaining as to bonding and to waiving assets to C&B or C&I or what, you know, the metalworks, yeah, any business entity, if as long as it stays within the, you know, all that is pledged the assets of that doesn't really, you know, that really doesn't touch this. But if C&B or let's say the new metalworks is going to propose to waive the sovereign immunity of the Cherokee Nation as to, you know, as per the Constitution, well, you know, if it's over $500,000, this council can choose not to delegate that authority. That if it's over $500,000, you do need to come over. And I would state that if we're in a construction bond in which we are going to pledge or be responsible for, let's say, $30 to $60 million of the Cherokee people's money, that is an issue that should come towards the tribal council for a specific waiver.
Let me just clarify that. I think he's quite right. The way it is currently interpreted by the business entities, I presume with past council's advice, is this particular act is adhered to by all business entities, whether we're pledging the nation's assets or merely the assets of that particular limited liability company. And so if from a business standpoint you would like to carve out instances where we only pledge the limited liability company alone as a statement, it can't come up to the Cherokee people, the government aspect, a carve-out of that would be, from, I think, the perspective of everyone involved in business, the single most important thing this council could do to greatly assist employment and profitability for the county.
And I would be happy to work with Mr. Carson in to make an amendment to that act for that purposes. But that really, I mean, like I said, that's a square peg in a round hole as we're talking about today's act.
To answer your question, Dr. Cobb, are you more confused now?
Well, I got one more. You made the comment that in somewhere in your sentence, in your diatribe there, you made the comment, if Cherokee Nation Metal Works waives sovereign immunity. Well, can Cherokee Nation, who can waive sovereign immunity?
Well,
I want to make sure.
Okay.
Can Cherokee Nation Metal Works waive sovereign immunity?
Well, under this act, the principal chief, right now, as the law stands, the principal chief, as long as it's verified, whatever verified means, by the Secretary Treasurer, can waive sovereign immunity for, just like we did for the
They come to him and say, we've got
and
this.
they make the case, and that's it.
Let me make a clarification on that, because there is a bit of a wrinkle to that, and I think it comes from perhaps the council. There is a particular form for the waiver that I believe the council granted the chief to sign. So it's a one-page document, and the chief, I believe, and Melanie can confirm, he believes he has the authority to only sign that form. Well, for sureties and others, they don't accept this particular form. They want you to say, we'll waive sovereign immunity and just be in the regular court system or whatever else. And so as a practical matter, the chief would be happy to sign those kind of things, I'm sure, for business activities. As a practical matter, that form is never sufficient for the very sophisticated parties we deal with.
The form was created by the administrative branch. We have, the council itself didn't. Well, that's the term, but not the form itself. Yeah,
Dr. Cobb, are you clear?
Yes, ma'am. Speak, Madam Speaker.
John, you had a comment?
I did, and, you know, the thing is, Melanie, it's no big deal to bring the phone company to us. It's no big deal to bring I mean, once a year, if we're getting over $500,000. But, you know, the thing is, Constitution says that the council is the only one that can waive sovereign immunity. We've given it to the chief for the for business transactions, sovereign immunity on a limited basis for business transactions. I'm just saying, $500,000, come to us and tell us what's going on. And it's not that, it will not be a stumbling block, and I seriously doubt that any contract will not be approved or signed or anything, but everybody will know what's going on. So with that being said, I'm going to call for the question.
Thank you. Question's been called. All those in favor of this legislation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
No. It's an act, unless that was going to be by consent, you would have to take a roll call vote.
Roll call. Those in favor signify by saying yes.
No, it's going to be a roll call. Sorry.
Bill John Baker?
Yes.
Jack Baker?
No.
Harlow Buzzard?
Yes.
Julia Coates? Here. Bradley Cobb? Okay. Joe Crittenden?
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk?
Yes.
Meredith Fraley?
No.
Janelle Fulbright? No. John Garvin?
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.?
Yes.
Tina Glory Jordan?
Yes.
Curtis Snell?
Yes.
Chris Soap?
No.
David Thornton?
Yes.
Kara Cowan Watts? No. Bill England?
No.
And Brad is still out, so we have 8 yes, 7 no.
8 yes and 7 no. Next item is item 12, and I believe they were going to withdraw them, correct?
Yes. It is
And
being withdrawn.
Is it being moved to another agenda?
Yes.
It is on the Monday Community
Service.
Committee.
Okay, that any announcements? No announcements. The food, entertain motion to adjourn, and the food is here. All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed, same sign.